working environment is not on our side. Relative humidity, temperatures, wind gusts we've seen today, everything is difficult for emergency responders. So I'd really like, and I'd really ask your time to just consider that the crews out there are working incredibly hard to make all this come together and work for you. Without saying any more there, I might hand it over to Rick. Thank you.
Can I get the mic back? So I'm just being made aware that individuals that were trying to get in online were not able to get in until now. So I just want to re-say what I kind of said. Thank you all for coming who are online. The structure for tonight is going to be an introduction from, an update from BC Wildfire Service, followed by an update from the regional district in terms of alerts, orders, and permits. And just going back to BC Wildfire Service, they're going to talk about what the fire is doing, what the weather is doing, strategies and tactics. And then we're going to open up to questions after the presentations. Tonight is going to be 60 minutes because we have to get back to work this evening, and we're hoping to answer as many questions as possible. Please don't put your questions into the chat until the question period so that we can keep track of them. Otherwise, it's going to be quite difficult. And I'll pass it over to Rick.
Will the people online here, if I just speak, let me use the mic. I have our voice.
Recording in progress.
You for sure do.
I might do that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Cubian, as introduced there. I'm from Invermere, BC, not too far away, and got attached to the inbound the Australian Incident Management Team to provide assistance with this series of incidents. So when we have a number of fires like this, we will do this at times, form something called a complex, which means that this incident management team is responsible for all the fires from sort of Slocan north up the lake to New Denver. Folks are probably fairly aware. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on those fires, but it has been an incredibly challenging scenario right from the ignition point on all of these wildfires. They happened after that long period of drying that we were all subjected to. I'm again from Invermere, we were part of it too, a solid couple of weeks of abnormally high temperatures and low relative humidities, followed by a very significant bout of lightning that resulted in 90 plus fires within the Southeast Fire Center. Actually, I think that was within the Arrow Zone. So when something like that happens, you're set up in a place where you end up with a whole bunch of ignitions all at once, and you're forced to prioritize as to which of those ignitions you're able to action. You're forced to take what resources you have and put them on the most important priorities each and every hour of each and every day. So that was what was going on the front end of this. You also have a period of time on the front end of organization. That's, in this case, was a couple of days while the inbound incident management team and all the resources kind of roll into a corner of the province that they're required in. So that happened at the front end of the incident as well. Not to say that we weren't active on these incidents as we were able right from the get-go, and we're resourcing them as we were able out of Castlegar. But of course, there were a lot of fires regionally happening all at the same time. So the BC Wildfire Service was doing its very best to get the right resources on the right fires. But at the end of the day, when you get into a scenario like that, you often do not have enough resources to put on every single fire. That was followed by those 2 days where the inversion was so thick. So I was on a number of incidents dating back to like 2003 where we had very similar conditions with these steep walled valleys. The smoke inversion was such that we had 2 full days, at least almost closer to 2.5, 3, where we couldn't fly on these incidents at all. The smoke was so thick out there that it was absolutely unsafe to fly. And we ended up in a position where we were just able to work from the roads where it was safe, and we really struggled to be able to move forward on these fires with the same level that we would have been able to if we'd had clear flying conditions from a safety perspective. Right as soon as that inversion lifted, we were super challenged on the fires, primarily to the north, on the east side, south of Silverton and New Denver. For those of you familiar, I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail, but we've been chasing fire real hard on Red Mountain Road for the last 72 hours. Super challenging scenario up there, and it remains a very challenging scenario. We've also been now focusing on fires adjacent to Slocan. On 11/17, I'm not going to rattle off too many fire numbers. That's always hard on folks. Up Melvay Creek, we were active building line up in that corner by Little Fest, trying to get ready for the probability that that fire did advance down slope, and doing the very best we have with the resources that were on hand to continue to manage that. And of course, the fires across the way, the up Ponderosa Creek, adjacent to kind of Lemon Creek, we've been very active as well, building line across the valley floor primarily. So in this case, with those steep slopes and very difficult fire behavior, so very high intensity fire and steep slopes, it is often not safe for us to put our fire personnel in those positions on those steep slopes. So what we will try to do is build line at lower elevation. So I should make sure I'm clear on my vernacular. We're using heavy equipment to put in a line. So we build the line down to dirt, and then we're able to either allow the fire to back down to that line or use other techniques to try and bring the fire to where it's safe for us to operate. In terms of using aircraft resources on those upper elevations, it is not often successful. In fact, it is very often unsuccessful because it is so critically dry out there. All of the fuel is available for combustion, and the impact that it has to put an air tanker drop in there is gone in 15 to 20 minutes. So it does not help much at all to do all of that work up adjacent to the fire. So I know that's probably a question a lot of people have, is why weren't we doing more of that? That is why it's often ineffective. And there are limited numbers of those resources. So while you may not have seen them here, you can be confident they were being used where they were most required, on fires within the Kootenays, sort of writ large, to the East Kootenays and all of the West Kootenays as well. So both of those fires, 11/17 and sorry, I promise not to rattle too many fire numbers off, but 10/69, which is up Ponderosa and Lemon Creek, remain very active today. I spent a good part of the afternoon in Spokane working on strategies and tactics to try and contain those fires. We are going to continue to build a heavy equipment line along the valley floor and build ways that we're able to bring those fires down to the valley floor, or they may come down to the valley floor to places that we can effectively action them in the coming days. It was a real show out there today. I appreciate it's probably a scary scenario. It was both columns were occupied in the afternoon there on either side of the valley. They were active, to be sure. Yeah, we're doing the very best we have with what we have. And I can tell you I'm sure all of you are wondering what's going on up the lake. It is also very active on the fires up the lake towards New Denver and Silverton. So we're taking all the resources we have, applying them to the priorities as best we can, and working as hard as we can. The crews, folks, the crews are going like I've never seen crews work before. 24-hour shifts for some folks, the structural protection group. So some of those firefighters, the structural protection firefighters up on Red Mountain Road, they're doing absolutely everything they can. You need to know that people have really poured themselves into this and done the very best they can, and will continue to do so. Folks are pretty tired. We've been going hard. There's more resources that have arrived today. We'll be deploying them tomorrow. And again, we'll continue to work on the priorities. So with that, I think, Dan, I'll hand it back over to you.
We lost any structures? Thank you, Rick. Do you mind? So thank you, Rick. Yes, he's much more articulate than I am. So the way that evacuation orders work and evacuation alerts work is we receive a recommendation from BC Wildfire Service, RDCK does, and we act on their recommendation based on the geography that they're identifying as having a potential risk or an imminent risk. Evacuation alerts are there's a potential risk for wildfire, or you'll also see there's some areas that have, we've extended alerts based on the Wildfire Service that include longer stretches of road, and that's because of egress. So if we had a situation where a fire moved down and blocked a particular highway, for example, then another area wouldn't be able to leave. So that area that becomes on alert as well. Village of Silverton right now is on evacuation, Village of Slogan is on evacuation alert. And we've got the Mulvey Creek fire side, so on the west side, down south of Village of Slogan is on evacuation order. And we also have from the Ponderosa fire, the other evacuation alert that stretches down the east side along Highway 6. For each of those fire areas, so when we have an area on evacuation order, when individuals aren't able to re-access those areas, so we have a temporary access permit system that's online. There are some individuals who have used that system, and you can find that at rdck.ca. There's a red bar up at the top, and if you click on that, you're able to get down the bottom of the page to see a temporary access permit area. And that's kind of all I want to say. Anything else? Okay. So at this point, we'll open up for questions. And what we're asking is that individuals come up again to the mic. There isn't a mic, but right there. And the questions that that make sense for this group, whatever you want to ask, that is specific to firefighting resources or tactics or these fires in particular. We're trying to keep it current to this incident. That's what this meeting is about. Whether, if you've got questions based on any of the information that we've given up here. Okay.
Instructions.
So we have a question in the front here that is asking, have any structures been lost?
Yeah, we have no structure loss confirmed at this time.
Yay.
So on the news at the coast, they said that they shipped 45 BC firefighters to Ukraine and then brought in Australian firefighters to replace that. How is that logical?
So it's a great question. It's not about this fire.
It is about firefighters
It
who
is.
could be helping.
It is. We're well resourced here. We've got an excellent team like Rick is talking about, and I can stay in terms of, I want to stay on track about this specific incident if possible, please.
You know, there's people who can't really hear me, so I'm wondering if I could. All right. Okay. So, all right. So, with the people at the back, they don't have, there's a lot of people that can't hear.
Of course, thank you.
We're old. Okay. So my question is, I read your website. It looks like winds are going to come in from the east tonight. Does that mean that, and they're going to be strong gusts, does that mean that it'll blow that Ponderosa fire down to the road? And then we all have a problem being evacuated from Slocan or where I live on Rooster Road. So that's my specific question about this particular fire, and it looks like it's coming in the middle of the night too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. We're of course tracking the weather very, very carefully. We're aware of the winds that are coming in the next couple of days, actually. And in general, as probably you all know way better than I do, winds in this valley tend to funnel south-north given the valley configuration. So we're anticipating those winds, despite their easterly, the way they're described as easterly, as coming primarily out of the south. We will have overnight lookouts in place. We are hopeful that it will stay on the slope. It has not moved down. That Ponderosa fire has been pretty static on that slope for the last number of days. It is spreading south to north across the slope, but is not substantially moved down the slope. So we're working really hard. Again, I'm kind of reiterating to try and get that line in at a lower elevation than the fire currently is. We're feeling pretty good about how it's backing down the slope, so a fire can go up slope or it can back down the slope. the rate at which it's currently backing down the slope and the rate at which we're constructing the line, we're hopeful we can get that line in a timely way that we'll be able to utilize it to work from in order to protect that side of the community. So it's a great question. Thank you.
And the RDCK works with BC Wildfire Service, so we're making sure that we're staffed up and ready to go if they need us to.
Thanks for all the details, Rick. Appreciate it. I do need some clarity. One thing you mentioned at least a couple of times was concentrating on the valley floor. So, like up by Martin's Road, like there's people above the valley floor, and Highway 6 isn't even considered valley floor yet. So, as far as us on the toe slopes, between Highway 6 and Ponderosa Fire, wondering if you're thinking about us, we're above the valley floor. Cheers.
That's a great question, and sorry for the oversimplification in the way I describe it. We're working at an elevation on the lower part of the slope that's above all of the structures that we're aware of and all of the residences that we're aware of, trying to put in those holding features. So it's the term firefighters use is a holding feature that will try to make sure that the fire does not cross. And again, it's an effort of trying to get that in before the fire moves down slope. And that's what we're trying to do. So thank you for that ability to clarify.
Yeah, no, we're done. I was wondering, live below the bottom of Springer Creek Road. Talking to the guys that are stopping there, and they're saying you guys can't get to the fire. It's up Dayton Creek. I was up there on Saturday. You could have went up there Saturday, put some people up there. You got an old fire guard in there already. Why wasn't anybody up there? I was up to the top, right where, and I was watching the fire, and it wasn't going anywhere. And this was at 9:30 in the morning. And when I seen people show up Sunday afternoon at 4 in the afternoon to go to work at 4 in the afternoon, and they're all dressed in brand new clothes, and they're just standing there. There's 12 of them. Where were they all day? It's kind of disturbing when our tax dollars are going out the door and nothing's getting done. You guys are doing a good job. I'm not saying you're not, but at the same time, because that fire could have been way easier to put out than what it is now.
Thanks, Sue. That's a great question. It's often asked when we're in heightened operations around multiple fires, why we weren't in a particular place at a particular time. Specifically for that site, I cannot answer exactly why we weren't there. What I can say is the distribution of resources are prioritised according to the risk, and the first risk is immediate life and safety of the community. What I can also say is there is a finite number of resources, whether you're in Australia or Canada or where we are now. We only have so many boots on the ground and so many aviation resources and other resources to do stuff. I don't want to simplify it, and I want to be respectful to answer that, but right now there will be occasions where you see fire activity, without knowing where the other firefighters and the other resources are. And it is hard because you see it and you think, why aren't they doing it? That's why. Because we can only protect so much, no matter how many boots on the ground we have, with a number of complex fires, coupled with the terrain and the weather. Often, we can't put firefighters in a particular place with the equipment because we put their lives at risk immediately because of a wind change or because of the conditions that they're experiencing or the terrain or the equipment that they have for that particular purpose. I know I'm generalising and I apologise, but that is an answer, and that's an answer around the world.
And I think I can throw in just a tad more detail. Thanks. I got here one day ahead of Jason. I can tell you on Saturday what was happening is Red Mountain Road. There were the homes up on Red Mountain Road were the focus, and there was a lot of energy going in up there. I know it always feels like you wonder where folks are. There was a lot of firefighters up on Red Mountain Road on Friday and Saturday. There was 2 fires that were threatening to kind of pinch down on Red Mountain Road, one from below, one from above. So that was the local scenario, and provide you a little bit of perspective on where some of the local resources were for sure.
Hi, I'm wondering, we have property that's in the Gwillem Creek, but it's inside the park. It's up and behind the first little hill that's on the west side of Slocan. And from the pictures I'm seeing, it looks like it might be heading towards the Gwillem Creek, that valley. And we're just wondering if everyone is aware that there is property up there with 2 cabins on it. Because we just, if it goes down into that valley, we know it's not much that can be done, maybe drop some water, I don't know. Just wanted to know whether you guys are aware that there's property with 2 cabins up in Gwillem Creek.
I think I can answer that with my loud voice.
Okay.
Why don't you and I make sure we gather up by the map at the end of this and make
Okay.
sure we're talking, I know what you're talking about, 'cause I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I do, but I'd like to make sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'm going to move to an online question at this point, and the question is the village of Slocan going to be on evacuation order? Oh, I might pass. Is the question.
Yeah, look, and I hope they can hear me online. It's a great question, and this is one of the clearly evident questions, both with you all in the community and interested other parties around the province in this area. When are we going to go to an alert? When are we going to go to an order? With the conditions as they are, it is very difficult to predict. So I strongly encourage all of you to be aware of the current status, of whether it's an alert, and certainly you'll be informed when it transitions to an order. That's not done lightly. When that's done purely for the safety, the life safety of you all. It's very difficult to manage for anyone the time between going to an alert and going to an order, because it's dependent on a range of variables, most of which is the sudden change in conditions, which is difficult to plan for. We can plan for resources, we plan through understanding fire behaviour, we have fire behaviour analysts, we have pointed directed weather condition reports, we have a series of means to be able to plan as best we can, but it's still not an exact science. And therefore, going from when we're in alert, which we are asking everyone to be aware and have a plan in place to be able to be prepared to get up and go if that order comes through. So, and it's done in consultation with the key stakeholders in the communities to make the best decision at the time. And we know it's a tough one. I've done them back home, and it is a tough one to ask people to leave their homes. It's even tougher when there's not a lot of notice and explanation, because the people that have the knowledge are working very, very hard to prevent that from happening. But when it gets to a point and we have those decision points that we plan out for, when that reaches that threshold where we decide that the risk to your lives is too much, then we consult with the stakeholders, make a decision. That's what's happened. That's what happens. The time between that is incredibly variable, and that is the nature of the business that we're in. I hope that answers the question online. Rick, did you get that? Thank you.
Should we leave the mic
We're
here?
going to leave the mic there.
Yeah. Turn this upside up and put it in.
Okay. Hi, I'm going to probably echo some of Raymond's comments, but I'm a fat old arrhythmia firefighter from back in the day. I was Cranbrook IA and Rocky Mountain Unit Crew, and I was there in 2003. I don't remember that inversion. I do remember hitting 3 fires a day, which was not atypical. I don't think the Silverton one probably would have got away, but everything else I'm hearing isn't doesn't fit. And basically everything I've seen violated every rule of firefighting we operated by, period. I was up on the Lemon Fire. I live right below. It was accessible, 10-minute drive up. Watched it. Then I went up the lookout. An IA crew was assigned, but they never put their feet on the ground. And so they tankered it with no boots on the ground and missed. And at the same time, 2 p.m. was about the time it came down, and there was still just the teeniest spot. The next day was calm. No firefighting boots were put on the ground on either of those fires the whole bloody time. There wasn't a dirty boot or dirty glove for days. Now, it's true, when you're in a shortage of resource, what do you do? I remember up to 100 starts at once in the year 2000 around Cranbrook. So there's an expectation that this failed, because you do have to pick and choose. But there's been changes. There's been changes in the configuration of the IA crews in the Southeast. We've always had the depth codes and the soil codes, so we can actually compare year to year without regard to climate change.
Can I encourage you to get to a question? Just.
Yeah, well, how do we?
With respect, sir, just seeing the other people.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, like, so the next day as well, as Raymond said, not even when it was way up by that lake, it was eminently, there was road access from all sides. You could have had water on the south, water on the north. Who's asking? So my question is, I guess, this isn't consistent with what I'm hearing. There was an IA crew assigned. The next day, they never put their boots on the ground either, and they already had that plan way down low. And when fires are left to burn, smoke happens, but they also spot this way. They don't necessarily just go to a line, so that is my question. What do you recommend we do for those of us who have questions about what actually happened?
We have a tendency to make sure I try to answer something. I wasn't here at the beginning. I cannot answer those questions. It will sound trite, but it's the same answer of priorities, resources, or the resources were put on the priorities. That's the best I can answer that. What I can say, though, is things are different now. I've been in this game for a long period of time. As you pointed out, we track things like something called the drought code, which is the long-term measure of deep drought. And we are in drought codes now that we've never been in before. And if folks don't understand based on the last few fire seasons that that's kind of where we're at, and it doesn't necessarily answer your question, sir, so I'm not trying to deflect, but I just thought it was an opportunity to mention that. We are under conditions now that's not like when I started firefighting. It is not like 2003. It's different. That's why the fires, in part why the fires are getting larger. It is in part why these things are happening. That's not a fire against you.
Fire. Our standard was 95% IA, which you met in Nelson. The success rate here with these fires was less than 10%.
So I just want to say thank you guys for being here. And I think we're all here for one reason, is like information. And you talk about resources being exhausted, and information is power. And you guys hold that. And it should be more available for all of us. You are the eye in the sky for all of us. And it takes 2 seconds to take a picture, post a picture. Why not?
Yeah. Hey, it is a great question. Back home, we have the same challenges. It's really important when we release information that we do it in a controlled way that makes sense, it's timely, and it's accurate. Until you have management structures in place, because initially I've been here, this is my third full day. Prior to being here, we had crews on the ground working hard, working incredibly hard, as Rick alluded to before, for the last week or so, bringing together enough crews to fight fires in multiple locations. As a result of management teams that are spread out all over the province, one of the reasons that the Australian teams come in is to provide that support. Part of that support to resources is management of crews, their welfare, their tasking, their operational, decision making, supporting that. But it's also information out to the community. It's only been to today where we've been able to actually start preparing good information that's relevant to provide out through the channels and working through RUCK and other stakeholders to try and get that information out. We don't withhold the information, so we don't, because we don't want you to know that our priorities initially is to support those crews in a safe way to get them to the jobs. We do information sharing collaboratively with other organisations, but my focus and priority is on looking after the crews that I have and the multiple crews that are coming in to make sure they're effective, but also they're safe and that you are safe. Information for you is just as important as that, and we work with our partners like Dan and the team to make sure that gets out to you. Dan, did you want to do it again?
No, I get it. Like, information is power, and I think just building on what Jason's saying, we're trying to share information as frequently and as precisely as possible. We have to make sure that we've got the information accurate, and then from an RDCK standpoint, we're sharing as up-to-date information as we can about alerts and orders through Voyant Alert, which is the application, an app on your phone. You can sign up to know whether or not you're on evacuation alert, to know whether or not you're on evacuation order. And that comes either through your phone, through a text message, or a phone call to you. So you can sign up for that. I've left some postcards in the back that show that on how to do it. I'm not sure what that is, but there's postcards in the back. There's also a phone number. There's also phone numbers on the other side of the postcard that you can telephone the Emergency Operations Center if you have any questions. That phone number is on there. It's 250-352-7701 if you have any questions about an evacuation alert, evacuation order, or about temporary access permits. And the other part to that is we try to do posts either online through our Facebook as frequently as we can. If we do have pictures, one of the things that on the new BC Wildfire website, so at bcwildfire.ca, if you click on a specific fire, there are tabs in there that are sometimes challenging to see, but it'll show you response details. Once you click on full details of the incident, you'll see a tab in there that says photos or videos if they're available. Like Jason said, our priority and their priority is around safety for crews.
Yeah. Because I was really worried. I've been running the reef, went across the river. Totally different perspective. So
Absolutely.
it's really easy to do. And you guys are up there.
Yeah.
Why not share it?
It's good feedback. Yeah. So,
I'm just going to step in. Hi, I'm Claire. I didn't introduce myself because I was thinking I might be able to get away without answering a question, but here we go. One of the things too, we know some folks in the area aren't comfortable accessing the internet, or that the app might be confusing. One of the things that we would like to do is set up a physical information board, likely at the Slocan gas station. That location, Julianne, my colleague in the back there, will be the one that will be able to supply that information. There will be maps as well as daily printouts of the community bulletin. So folks can cruise by there once a day and get that information if the internet is just not something you're comfortable using. So Julianne does have copies of the community bulletins in the back. And you're welcome to connect with her or myself after the meeting too. And we can help you get set up with more direct access to information.
Hey, Claire, can I just throw in a quick building point? Totally take your point. I live over near Mirror. I know what it's like to look on the BC app and see a few photos. I'm up in the air a bit. I'll work with Julianne. We'll try and get that rolling. Again, I don't want to sound like the team's just been in play this is their third day, been real busy, but I hear you loud and clear.
Everybody in BC. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I know. We'll do our very best.
Share it.
Yep, we'll get it out. Thank you.
So if I can move to a couple online questions. Can BC Wildfire Service speak to why there's no air support until the afternoon? Strategy question.
Yeah, again, I think I kind of described that early on, that the tactics of throwing in just air support with these current fuel moisture conditions without putting it in a place that the crews can get to has very, very limited effectiveness. Aircraft have limited times of the day they can fly, so we often won't fly them earlier in the morning because they're required later in the day. So each of those types of aircraft have like an 8-hour time frame they can fly. If you fly them at 8 in the morning, you can't fly them after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And us pouring water on it will not make a difference is what I'm saying. So we have to wait for it to get it to a place where we can put water on it and then back it up with trees. Wednesday, they go 5 days for someone to even come to the post. I think we're going back to, I'm sorry, but I think I've tried to answer that as best I could there. I hope that's useful.
Well, I guess my, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess what I would like to say is not necessarily a question, but a statement. Last year we had friends and family, Monty Lake, loggers, wiry loggers. Hopefully, if it gets to a point in this area, this valley, there's lots of people with equipment who would be more than willing to help save their neighbor's place, their place. Hopefully you guys don't want to find those people who are trying to help out, like happened in Monty Lake.
So, thank you. I mean, it's great to have that neighbor helping neighbor piece. When BC Wildfire Service recommends to the RDCK to put an area on an evacuation order, so I'm going to pick up on that with, if there was the possibility of an evacuation order, you get, because that's where we're talking about, if I'm remembering Monty Lake right. So when there is an evacuation order in place, that's in place for people's safety, from a responder standpoint to people in that local area. So when there is an evacuation order in place, it's deemed because, or it's in place because there's an imminent threat to life safety. So people are asked to leave that area. People, like in Monty Lake, occasionally choose to stay. That does put them in danger. That does put our responders in danger. And in certain instances, that prevents these guys from fighting the fire that they need to fight. So we have no intention, we don't want to find people. That's not what we want to do.
I can also add, the folks that are qualified heavy equipment operators, there's lots of local folks that are already working with fires. And if they have their ticket, they can get signed up to be part of the incident. For folks that are not equipment operators, if they're part of their volunteer fire department, is a pre-established, they already have the training, they will be involved in the incident through our structure protection structure that we have in place. So there is an ability for local folks that are qualified to be able to be involved in the incident and support from that local perspective. So they're able to support their neighbors as well as contribute to their local.
Where can we sign up for that?
If you've got your ticket, I can follow up with you after the meeting. I'll just be right there.
Okay.
Am I online? So a question from online, and this is a preparedness question. So maybe Claire can help us again there. What should people with rooftop sprinklers do when evacuating?
If you've got a rooftop sprinkler system, you are more than welcome to turn it on. Obviously, sometimes folks that have a sprinkler system may not know how to use it. So we really recommend you know what you're doing before you turn that thing on, because it can cause a significant amount of water damage that your insurance may not cover if you have put that up and installed it yourself. If you don't have a sprinkler system, that's why we have the structural protection crews that will be there, and they will be able to work with your property and apply the structural protection system, as well as do some quick fire smarting wins, such as moving propane tanks away from your house, moving firewood, moving any kind of dry debris that's around the area that may be flammable and may put your structures at risk. So got the sprinklers and you're being evacuated, go ahead and use them if you know how to.
So I'm going to ask one more question in terms of staffing and it's volunteering question. So the question online is there volunteering that we can do to somehow help the firefighter? So can we talk about it from a firefighting standpoint first, and then I'll talk about it?
Different jurisdictions do things differently around the world, but right now there's a series of qualifications needed to be a part of a fire service. There's significant training to ensure the safety of the individuals that we put in a very risky occupation. And I hear that there's some ex-firefighters here, and I know you understand that, but the level of training and teaching about tactics and use of equipment and working in team environments, it's not to say that there wouldn't be a lot of people in the room that would be very capable of doing it, but organisations such as BC Wildfire need to ensure that when they put people in harm's way, they have a duty of care to protect them. So it is different around the world in some areas, but right here, right now, that's sort of where that is at. Rick, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I could throw in, yeah, I'm not quite sure if the tone of the question, if it was about anything that people can do to help out. In general, the only thing I can think of that's just so lovely, the firefighters always really appreciate the sort of signs or anything like that do sometimes show up. I know the crews really appreciate that. So if that was the tone of the question, if that's kind of what it was after. We had another question at another one of these that I was at one day, and no, we can't accept food and that type of thing. But if it's about that interest in trying to show support, the signs are just a wonderful way to do that. If anyone's interested, the crews really appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Rose. I'm kind of on the Springer and Martins. My property is just in between. Kind of been in connection with multiple people in the neighborhood, and also doing a lot of bushwhacking and chainsawing and anything that as a neighborhood we can do to prevent. A couple of feet on the ground have just like overlooked the barrier that you guys are starting the break to make. And I am curious what your plan is to improve that, just because it is very small and thin. We also have noticed some of the creeks haven't really been managed that well, since a lot of us get our water from there and a lot of us are pulling water right now. So we're just curious of your management around creeks and how you're going to fill that break just a little bit more, or if how we can help while there is not an order in place.
Yeah, so I think I can take that. Too much trouble. So when we put in the heavy equipment lines, that's generally what we're talking about with a larger piece of machinery. We're highly conscious of trying to do so in a way that doesn't create long-term environmental impact. In this case, on a number of these places, we brought in a geotechnical assessment before we've done things because the slopes are so steep and there is that long-term potential. We've also got a rehabilitation specialist already attached to the team, so that's something that BC Wildfire Service commonly does, which means that person is actually going to be responsible for rehabilitating these lines. We bring them in as we build these lines in a way that we can hopefully put them in the best way possible that we can rehab them in the end. And so we're highly conscious of the drinking water situation. It's been something we've talked to as a team regularly, and our staff are all conscious of that as well. And we are out there trying to do our very best to move as quickly as we can.
Do you mind if I just add something to that? This was just observed yesterday evening that the creeks, there was a whole bunch of debris and trees fallen on a creek, which can, in the future, if it's not dealt with, can can actually cause landslides. So maybe this isn't necessarily a question in this statement right here, but just like maybe bringing a little more care into the water system, because we don't want to lose any more water. Thank you.
Sure.
I'd just like to say first, thank you for what you're doing. And to the point that you made, that actually Maggie made, you have reiterated you don't have a lot of resources here in this area. And, unfortunately, that's where we're at and there's not much we can do. My question is this, because obviously with the shortage of resources and you're fighting the fires, our homes are our homes. It's everything to us. You're fighting the fires and you're trying to protect everybody. My question is this: if we choose not to leave because it's our home and we're going to defend our home, what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. It's a question that when we have these meetings, it's always coming up. And I have not been on evacuation order in my life, and it's a question that I think I'd ask myself too. So I appreciate it. So if you are asked to leave, you have an evacuation order and you fall into an evacuation order area and you choose to stay, that's up to you. And you're allowed to stay there as you want. You're going to have people that are going to keep coming to check on you and knock on your door because they're concerned for your safety. They're concerned for our firefighter safety. And you can stay there, just like we saw in other places that have had evacuation orders. One piece to be aware of is from just a legal standpoint, if you do have minors in your home, those minors can't stay. So that's going to be one of the caveats. You're allowed, it's your choice to stay in that area. However, if you leave, you can't go back to the evacuation area.
What about when you get to the water?
Okay, can I just, is this a follow-up?
Yes.
This isn't a contract, that's just how it is. So that's the law around evacuation orders.
There's a contract, and you can say that you can't come back. There's a contract, and you got more in there.
Yeah, it's sort of echo that. So I'm Sean Kennedy, so we might wait. I'm the detachment commander of the Slow Handling and Us right now. And echo what Dan said, we're not going to be killing people out if you move this. We're gonna keep coming and checking on them as long as it's safe and keeping recommending that you leave. There's no going to be any signing or anything like that from our end. We just don't have time to draw contracts and things like that. If you're staying, you're staying. But I can't have, if the highway is closed, you can't have folks moving back and forth. What's the problem? The only time I would ever actually basically pulling out of there is if you're interfering with funds. It has happened a couple times. Everyone else that's staying to defend their property, that's fine. These guys don't interfere with these guys. That's my biggest job. Can have movement and do their job. Again, with minors and kids, they got, so you want to defend your home, make sure you get your room on site. And that's something we also do have to get the kids out. Can't sit there. We want to look at everybody. Save it. You know, save it.
We live adjacent to the village of Slocan in Brandon. And our biggest fear is that Highway 6 is going to be breached right down by Oliver's house where you put the road up that he had built to access his timber above his house. And that's a real pinch point. The fire's coming down there. It's at all these escort corners. And I'm afraid it's going to cross there. And should that happen, and people in Slocan have to run for their lives, they can't go that way. And there's a pamphlet that said, we can't use a Forest Service road. It's right in one of the pamphlets that's being distributed. So if the Forest Service road through the Little Slocan isn't reached by fire, and those people use that road to get to Pasco. 2, should the Highway 6 be impassable, can we use the rail trail? 3, there's used to be a road on the west side linking Ferry Siding to Rodman's house. It went through private property. It's a rudimentary road, but with the big equipment we have right now, would that be another alternative? And my question is, we've seen the horrors of people driving through forest fires on both sides. Basically, people running for their lives. And often they're successful. Very often there's very few failures. But we have alternatives. Can they be put to use?
Thank you.
before you answer it.
Yeah.
You really couldn't hear it, and it sounded like the word plan.
Yeah, but not at all to dismiss it, or I think it's very specific set of questions. And what I'd recommend is that I don't feel comfortable, and I don't think I have all the information to stand up here and answer that very specific set of questions. What I would recommend is that a couple of us, including perhaps the RCMP, gather over here at the end and have a conversation that's specific to those very specific questions. Is that a fair, I don't feel like I could sit up here and tell you exactly how that would work. I would rather sit down with a map and try and work through that and better understand. Is that fair, everybody?
I just want to speak to our online individuals. There's some people that can't hear us well, but there's a lot of people that can hear us very well. So make sure that your volume is up.
Hi there. I have a comment about the Voyant system and a suggestion. I have one of the tell us voicemail when I press 1 for this, I get a million different jobs. By the time the message comes through, I just get, yeah, well, you don't have to leave, and I don't know what the issue is or where the area is. I got 3 messages that were cut off. My suggestion is they repeat the important part of the message at the end of the message in case someone because there's no way we're going to be able to work with Telus in 10 minutes to sort that out. But the beginning of the messages were cut off for me, so I had no idea what area the alert was or whether there was an alert. My second question is about the evacuation orders. You kind of look at it before dark and kind of take your best guess or educated guess, that, we're probably not going to have to evacuate them tonight. I just wonder if we haven't heard by 8 o'clock, is it a pretty good chance that there isn't evacuation orders that will be issued, or is it? You can't say that. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
No, it's a good question. Look, we get asked about orders a lot and how we come to that decision. I'll have a crack at that, answer to that question. I guess when I was talking before about the reason for orders, and I want to repeat myself, in terms of how we come to that decision, and it's not a decision made lightly. We also know, in consultation with partners that are there to make sure that you're all safe and you're informed about these things, we look at a number of things, and one of those things is egress and access before a fire is in a position to have you cut off. And the decision to make that is always preferably much earlier in the day. Unfortunately, sometimes fire conditions change really quickly. I mentioned before about our fire behaviour analysts, specific weather reporting, and our experienced fire officers that plan and have experience in firefighting and leading firefighting operations still don't get it quite right. In a world of technology, it's still not a completely accurate science, but we do the best we can with what we've got. To answer that question, we try and avoid going from an alert to an order in the afternoon, but sometimes the changes to the weather, the sudden changes to wind, there's not a lot we can do but do that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Lucas. I live in Winlaw on Highway 6. First of all, thank you very much for doing what you're doing. Appreciate it. Couple of questions. If I live on Slocan River, 7 acre. If I draw water from the Slocan River to protect my property, is that allowed? I don't know the answer to that. If I got a sump pump and pulled water from the Slocan River to spray the house down, would I be allowed to do that? Am I allowed to? Okay, that's one question. Second question, some of us have property, possibly tiny houses or space for refugees. If there's anyone who's displaced, is it possible to put a name and number down so that control can allocate space for people who have been displaced? And if that's an idea. When there is an evacuation orders, would you be coming down the highway with the sirens on or some indicator to us at nighttime that if the winds are changing? I don't know the answer to that. And that's about it. Thank you.
I'm going to speak to the evacuation order first. Sure. That one's very important. If there is an evacuation order, we have multiple ways that you're going to be notified. Again, the voyant alert is very important to sign up for. That's that blast that goes out either by app, phone, or text. Very important. Evacuation order, when we have time to do it, you're going to have somebody who's going to be delivering an order, is going to tell you you need to be getting out, and is going to hand deliver you a piece of paper. Otherwise, you're still going to get somebody knocking on your door and be like, you need to get out now. Okay, so it's very important that when you're on evacuation alert, to be ready to leave immediately. That's when I encourage people to have your grab and go bag. You've heard about it. Have it at your door, ready to go. Have your plan ready with your family. Know what you're going to do with your pets, your farm animals, where you're going to meet up again. Don't trust cell phones. I mean, I don't have a lot here anyways, but know where you're going to meet again. So be ready to go. So your multiple methods are going to make sure that somebody's coming down the road. As far as tiny houses, offers for people to stay, call the EOC, let us know. It's not something that we'll typically do. We usually organize through pre-established locations for people like hotels or dorms, that kind of thing, and appreciate the offer. Okay, I'm conscious of time. It's 7 o'clock. I have some questions online that I'm going to rattle through. A last question in the room.
Okay, so tonight, the prediction is for some pretty big wind, right, from the east. Maybe it's from the northeast. You never know. It could blow that way. However, have you thought about using the lake as an evacuation way for the people of Slocan?
In a perfect world, we don't get to that point. Right? So BC Wildfire Service is monitoring where the fire is. One of the key goals, it would be challenging to move a lot of people by a lake, right? So our key goal is to make sure that we're getting enough intel, enough information, having enough of a crystal ball that we are able to move people before that fire gets to the highway. This is one of the questions online as well. But we're trying to get enough forewarning that we wouldn't get into that situation. So it's very situational, depending where the fire is, what's going on. That's a good point, and you reminded me to say it. If you are being evacuated, so if there is an evacuation order, somebody knocks on your door and tells you that, they're also going to tell you, we want you to travel down Highway 6. That's the best route for you. We want you to go down. Well, here would be Highway 6 in many ways. So I want to ask, which one? Okay, so I think I answered the question. There's a question online of whether or not the fire hits the highway. So we don't want to get to that. We want to get enough ahead of it that we would be using the highway. That's obviously the key evacuation route here. There's another question of what happens if the fire passes the guard. So I'm going to assume that's like, there's a general question there. And if there's any specificity that we can bring to this particular fire. And this will be the last question for this evening.
Yeah, tactically, if the fire passes the guard, we'll be continuing to use the tools that we're able to use. So it's a bit of a tough one to get into. We definitely, it won't be over if it gets past the guard. We'll continue to pull out all the equipment we can and utilize the resources as we can. So it's a bit of a tough question or a tricky question, but that's kind of my answer to it. Yeah.
So I want to thank you all for coming. I'm getting information as everything is happening, because you're going to hear it when you leave here. So I want to share it so that it's not information that you don't know about. We have gotten word that Silverton will be going to evacuation order. And so that's very difficult news to hear. It's just coming in now, which is why we need to leave and make sure that we get back to work. I wish you all to stay safe. I want you to make sure that you're looking at rdck.bc.ca for latest evacuation alerts and orders. Make sure you're signing up for Voyant Alert. bcwildfire.ca is where you can get the most up-to-date information on fires. If you guys need to go for it.
Yeah.
On fires, as well as making sure you're looking at Drive BC for any road closures. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Yes.
Recording stopped.